Hello everyone, welcome back to the show. Today we're very happy to have Mr. Machalani from Mistplay with us, one of the fastest growing company in Canada at the moment. So Mr. Machalani, hello and welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey Henry, thanks for inviting me to the show. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, and Camila, how about you?
Very well, thank you for asking.
Yeah, then we'll jump straight into it since we know you're a very busy person. So before getting into Mistplay, can you tell a bit about your backstories, such as what was your interest as a teenager, and how did you narrow down your interest to computer science?
Good question. I guess growing up, I grew up playing video games quite a bit. Like from pretty much every console, Nintendo, all the Nintendos and Xbox and the portable Game Boys as well were a big part of my childhood growing up. Computer science was an interest for me because my father was actually also a computer scientist, and he was teaching computer science. So I grew up with kind of like being surrounded with like the latest computers and wanting to become a programmer at a young age. So I started, building my first website when I was 13 years old, and I was programming at 15. Yes, I grew up with video games, and my father influenced me quite a bit. And from an entrepreneurial standpoint, my parents had their own business, and my uncle had their own business. It's very my grandfather had his own business, so I was surrounded by family members who started their own companies, and so it was definitely something I wanted to do growing up.
Okay, speaking about your journey growing up, so you were a Marianopolis student in pure and applied science, and you later went on to McGill University in honors software engineering. So can you just explain some of the influence on in those education on your later careers?
Yeah, so the reason I went to Marianopolis was that, so when I was in high school, I went to a French private high school in the North Shore, and I was interested in robotics. I'm still very interested in robotics, and Marianopolis was one of the best CEGEPs in terms of like a robotics program. And so that was actually one of the reasons I went to Marianopolis and I applied there. So that's how I got into Marianopolis. I chose pure and applied because I knew I wanted to be either. I was interested in three fields. It was computer science, robotics, and aerospace. And so those are the three areas or fields I was interested in kind of like working in. And so pure and applied was the relevant field of study for all three career paths. So that's why I did pure and applied. And when I was graduating from Marianopolis, I was leaning towards either computer science or aerospace engineering. And it was very tough, but ultimately the decision was based on the market, and the market seemed to favor computer science. There was a lot more demand for computer scientists, and I felt like software was more of a universal skill that can be applied in the future in aerospace as well. So I ended up going with computer science and programming because, and then I also had entrepreneurial goals, and it seemed like starting a company in a pure software company had a lot more chances of success and seemed to have a lot more opportunities and more kind of like ease of access in terms of funding. So those are the many reasons why I went for honors software engineering.
Interesting. And so talking about honors software engineering, I heard you developed war games at McGill and had extensive experience with programming languages such as HTML, JavaScript, CSS. So how did those coding experience impact your later ventures, such as we'll talk about at Microsoft or in Mistplay?
Yeah, they were super relevant. I think the most relevant classes I took at McGill were all the like 500 level classes. So the graduate level courses were very powerful in terms of like allowing me to specialize in building and architecting scalable software systems. And those skills allowed me to do well, I think, at Microsoft or get into Microsoft at least. And then I use those skills still today. Classes like distributed systems and software architecture, and modern computer games were all like super relevant to my job today and founding Mistplay and even at Microsoft.
And speaking of classes and your time at McGill, so during your 3 years at McGill, you built an application called ErgoView, which allows quote unquote shoppers to compare product sizes, ergonomics, specification, and more in a 3D interactive environment. So can you give us a bit more detail on the application?
Yeah. So I'll say that's like one of my first or probably second attempts to building a product that I launched. So it was basically a frustration I had at the time. I had ordered a laptop, and the laptop was very thick. It was very like bulky, and it made me realize that when you're buying things online, it's hard to it's hard to visualize them in actually like visualizing them like properly in a 3D like it's a lot better to take the product in your hands. You can look at every angle of the product. You can compare it side by side with another product to see if the TV is thinner or not. The idea of ErgoView was compare laptops, TVs, phones in a 3D environment, and so I had like probably like 50 or 100 electronic devices at a time where you can add them to this 3D space, and you can compare them, rotate them in any angle, open or close the devices, compare their sizes. Like you can compare them in a normalized way and see if one is thicker than the other. And then you can see the profile of each device and see what are the reviews on CNET and on TechCrunch, and watch YouTube videos about them. So it's like a one website to learn everything you can about the device and compare them in a physical 3D space type of thing. So yeah, I built that, launched it, and quickly got busy with school. And at the time I didn't know how to do marketing, and I think that was my biggest lesson one of my lessons was I didn't know why I didn't succeed. And at the time I thought that you would build a product, launch it, and then people would just come to your product, which was not the case. What I didn't know at the time was I didn't know that marketing was a very big part of launching a product, and that it's as hard, if not harder, than building the product itself.
Okay, and how did you come to start this company? Like concretely, did you just start coding on it alone, or were there a co-founder? So how was your process actually establishing a product?
For ErgoView, it was just me by myself. It was actually a way for me to get really deep and get my hands dirty with programming. So I would wake up at 5 a.m. every day to watch like tutorial videos online on how to code in HTML, JavaScript, and Flash at the time. ActionScript 3.0 was the language I was using for the 3D because HTML5 didn't exist yet. So I was taking those courses while wrapping up Marianopolis / starting at McGill. And it allowed me to really advance my programming skills quickly because building a project is the best way to learn. So for me, it was a way to get my hands really dirty with programming and deepen my knowledge and my skills in programming web applications. And at the same time, it was my first step into like the entrepreneurial world. But at the time, I was very keen on like just building something that people would use.
Okay, then speaking of something that it's something people would use. So your next venture after ErgoView, which is you founded Tap2 in 2011, which was also the time you stopped developing ErgoView, and Tap2 was later acquired by Teraway. So what was your experience building this application? And first of all, what is this application?
So going back again to the why I built that. So it was this was back in 2010 when the idea came about. I was doing an honors degree at McGill in software engineering, and part of that honors degree is you have to do a research project. And my research project was was what ended up being Tab 2. It's basically a collaborative note-taking and presentation software, online software for teachers and students. The frustration I had when I was studying at McGill was my math teacher and a few other of my teachers, they would write so quickly on the board and they would talk like towards the board as they're writing, that I would have to like just copy everything they're writing down so like at high speeds, and it didn't give me the chance to actually listen to them, understand what they're saying. So I struggled with like taking down notes while listening to the teacher and understanding what he was saying, and it prevented me from like trying maybe to calculate things on my own, because I was so busy like copying down everything he was writing on the board. And so ideally it would have been fun if I had a friend that was copying down all the notes while I could just listen and focus on what the teacher's saying and understand what he's trying to teach us. And so the idea for Tab 2 came from that, where I envisioned like a world where every class would have these smart boards where the teacher would write on a smart board, and as they're writing on the board, whatever they're writing would appear in real time on your tablet. So this was 2010, so the iPad was brand new. So the writing would appear on your tablet, and then it would be saved in the cloud and recorded, so that you don't need to worry about copying down the notes. And then you as a student can focus on what the teacher is saying, and then you could add your own personal notes on top of his notes, and all of that information would be saved in a web application in the cloud, kind of like Google Drive, but for this scenario. And if ever, let's say you want to listen to something he said, you can like a DVR, you can go back in time and rewatch like the last 10 minutes and hear what he was saying and see him write the notes again. And so that's the platform I wanted to build, a teaching remote, and it would allow also for students to attend class from home if they're sick, and so they can join in remotely. And we built like a system where you can ask questions, you can chat with other students, with the TA. So that's kind of like what it ended up evolving towards. It became a full learning management and collaborative platform, and it was fully built in HTML5. HTML5 was brand new at the time, and so it was really exciting to build as a research project. It got me a good grade, and it got me a job at Microsoft. And while I was at Microsoft, I ended up, it wasn't even finished, like I didn't launch it yet, but I ended up selling it to a company in Seattle that was very involved in the education space. So I sold the unfinished platform to them. It wasn't that much money. It was just enough money to buy like a small car, for example.
Okay, I totally thought that it turned into OneNote or something.
No, it didn't turn out. No, but it was in my opinion better than OneNote for a lot of things. But yeah, it was. I spent most of my time at McGill, most of my nights working on that, so it took a lot of my energy, and I learned a lot by building that. It was a huge learning experience.
We're just going to pick up right where you left off about Microsoft. So you touch on that, how this program practically got you the job at Microsoft, but how was that really in detail? If you could give us just a bit more of a description of how your time was at Microsoft and how you actually got the job, that would be greatly appreciated.
As I mentioned earlier, like my intention as a student was not to go work for a big corporate company like Microsoft. I was actually against that idea, and I really wanted to start my own company or work for a startup. But what I realized, so the opportunity to work at Microsoft came in an organic way. My friend just mentioned to me, that he was interviewing at Microsoft and that I should interview too. And I asked him to connect me with a recruiter, and he did. And I gave my resume, and last minute they added me to the on-campus interview at McGill. I interviewed on campus at McGill with an engineer. I specifically interviewed for the program manager role, which is like the product manager role in most companies. He asked me. The interview was basically, it ended up turning into just a presentation of Tab 2. I just showed them what I built, the architecture I used. I gave him a demo of the product, and I think that impressed him. Like it was a very like not normal interview, and the interviewer was so impressed by what I built that he immediately told me, like, we're gonna fly you to Redmond and you'll meet people there. So that's what I meant by it got me a job at Microsoft. Is like the first question he asked me was like, what are you like? What kind of hobbies do you do on the side? And I said, oh yeah, I'm building this thing. Do you want to see it? And then he's like, yeah, I want to see it. So I showed it to him, and then he started asking me questions about how I built it. And so the whole interview ended up being just talking about that project. And I knew the project so well that I crushed the interview by doing that. And then when I went to Microsoft on campus, I did the same thing. I just purposefully kind of took control of the interview and talked about what I built, and people were pretty impressed by it. So it landed me. They gave me an offer on the spot. They asked me why I didn't want to be a developer because obviously I had a lot of development experience. I told them I want to be program manager because eventually I want to be an entrepreneur, and program manager seems to be like the CEO of a product, and so you learn that those communication skills, those leadership skills and organizational skills that you would need to run a company. And so that's kind of why I decided to be a program manager instead of a developer at Microsoft. And yeah, like the interviewers were cool with that. They were like, yeah, like this is going to be the best experience to become an entrepreneur one day. And so it got me really excited. And I ended up accepting the job offer. I didn't accept it on the spot, but I accepted it like a week or two later after thinking about it. And then I moved to Seattle. Yeah.
That is truly a very like, how do I put it? It's realistic, yet it's so inspiring. And that's so cool to see somebody so close to home in Montreal land such an amazing job and opportunity through such an amazing project in itself. Then I guess riding the train of entrepreneurship that you were talking about, what were some of your other point of contacts with entrepreneurship, such as we found out that you actually started quite a few companies, but what were some other companies that you have started or your other experiences with quote unquote entrepreneurship?
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I guess I've already mentioned, you guys talked about Node, ErgoView and Tap2. And then while I was at Microsoft, my one of my good friends, who was also a program manager at Microsoft, he was a bit more senior than I was. We wanted to build something together for fun. So we decided to build. So mobile apps was like all the hype at the time. This is back in 2013, and so we decided to build a mobile app. The idea that the app was called Backflip. The premise of it was to craft what we called a flip book. It's a 5-page kind of like flip book, digital flip book. Actually, it's funny because the UI looks a lot like TikTok today. It was full screen, no Chrome, nothing. Literally the same like swiping behavior. Like you swipe up and it snaps to the next one. But the difference is that you can swipe from right to left, and it would turn a page like a flip book, and it was this 3D animation, and people would have 5 pages to tell a story, and each page is a picture or a video, and so it's kind of like you have 5 pictures or short videos. It was 10 seconds of video max, and it was inspired by Vine at the time, the short videos, and Instagram, which was photos. So we combined the two together in like a way to share. And this was before stories, like Snapchat stories and Instagram stories. So it was kind of like 5-page stories that you can tell, and you can comment on, and you can like the stories as well. So we built that. We spent 6 months building that after work. So we would work like 7 p.m., drive from Redmond to Seattle, go straight to a coffee shop, and we would code till like 3 a.m. And we would do this every day for 6 months. And after 6 months, we were pretty burnt out. And we launched it, and we put it on Product Hunt. We put it on a few like betalist.com and a few like websites like Reddit. It got some users. I think we got to 1,000 users. People were using it. We had some like power users that were using it a lot and posting a lot. Once again, we put $0 towards marketing and 0 effort towards marketing other than posting it on Product Hunt. And we had no knowledge of marketing, both of us. And it's at that moment. So two reasons why it failed is, one, we were both working we both had really nice jobs and we were paid very well. And so, it was easy for us to just fall back on the safety net and say, like, you know what, we tried, we were burnt out now. We're going to focus, on our careers at Microsoft, and kind of like, it was fun and all, but it didn't take off. So it was easy to give up, essentially. Like, there was no like survival instinct, essentially. So that was one of the reasons, we gave up quickly. And then the other reason is both of us didn't have that marketing expertise. And we didn't even know that marketing was the problem. We just thought that, once again, building a product, you build it and people will come. Like, that was our philosophy and thoughts. But little did we know that every successful product that you use today, a lot of marketing efforts and growth hacking efforts went behind it in the early days, and today as well. And so, that was like, so when, after building Backflip, when I decided to build Mistplay, a few years later, I did some introspective thinking, and I realized, what, I think those two things. One is the fact that I had a cushy job, and two is the fact that I didn't know how to do marketing. I'm going to solve both of those problems. I'm going to read up a lot of books on marketing, and I'm actually going to quit my job and work full-time on my startup, so that I have no choice to survive and succeed, or else I'll eventually run out of money and have to go back to working at a company. And so those are the two like big decisions I had to make on my next attempt to building a company.
That's very interesting, actually. And I guess my next question kind of relates to that, since you quit your job, focus full time on this new startup that you have just came up with, Mistplay. So I guess the question would be, how did you manage to raise money for Mistplay, given that it's something you built from the ground up?
Yeah, that was another thing I wasn't good at, was raising money at the time. So I wasn't surrounded by entrepreneurs or entrepreneur friends, or like, my parents were old school entrepreneurs. They funded themselves with their money, so I wasn't exposed to the whole VC world. And at the time, like, Montreal was not where it is today in terms of like tech entrepreneurs and like funding. There was no funding. There was not a lot of VCs. It's very, not a lot of people knew about how to raise money. So in my mind, I had to save up a bunch of money. So what I did is I lived in a half basement. I was paying only $500 a month for my rent in Seattle, which is a very expensive city. I was living with two roommates in a house, and I was saving as much. And I got a Honda Civic instead of getting like a nice car like most of my friends got. So I was just like living as cheaply as possible, saving as much money as I can. And when I quit, I used my own savings to bootstrap the business, and that was just like my way of building a company. And so I never raised money until end of 2017. So I quit my job October 2015, and I was basically paying myself no salary, just kind of like, obviously, like buying food and all, using my savings. And I was funding the company with my savings. And I recruited my co-founder, and he wasn't getting paid a salary, but we were dipping into our savings too. And then we finally found product market fit in the end of 2017. So we had to pivot like once. And when we found product market fit, that's when we raised $500,000 from it was the father of an old classmate from Marianopolis, actually. So your friends at Marianopolis are usually like, nearly all my friends at Marianopolis became successful. So I think it's a very good school to go to, and there's a strong network that comes out of that. And I would definitely keep those friends close, because you guys can help each other out in the future. And so yeah, my friend's father invested, and also he connected us with like some people at RBC, so it helped us with getting a big line of credit that helped us manage our cash flows. And we haven't raised ever since. So we only raised one time from a super angel, and we never needed to raise from VCs because we had this bootstrap mentality from the beginning, where in our mind, the only people that can fund us is our clients. And so all of our funding came from our customers. They were just paying us, and we made sure they would pay us quickly so that we can reinvest all of that money into growing the company. And so that's how we bootstrapped the company. And but we did raise that one round of investment from a super angel.
And did you guys happen to join any incubators or accelerators during the process?
Yeah, so in 2018, so the company was already taking off at this time. We were making over $1 million in revenue when my friend mentioned this company, this incubator called Next Canada in Toronto. Now they have a division in Montreal, but at the time I think it was only Toronto. So in 2018, I applied and got accepted to join Next Founders, which is it's an incubator slash kind of like a boot camp essentially for entrepreneurs to scale their mindsets and think about a bigger building a bigger business than typical Canadians think about building. And that was actually a good thing to do because it definitely like helped me scale my ambitions and my mindset in terms of what kind of company I want to build. And I didn't attend, so it was in Toronto, so it was hard for me to commute back and forth between Montreal and Toronto. So I only went to like 3 of the classes out of many, but I attended most of the dinners, and it helped me build a network in Toronto. And as I mentioned, I went to the most important classes, which is one of them was how to assess the value of your company and how do VCs think about it. And another class was really like scaling your mindset and not avoiding to try to build a $10 million company and try to build a 100 million plus company or a $1 billion company. So that was the one of the professors was just kind of like drilling it in our mind that like we should think bigger than a $1 million company or $10 million company. And so that was cool and really helped. And so that was my short experience with incubators. I think it was more for the network. It was really also good to connect with like-minded people. Being an entrepreneur can be lonely, so it's good to network with other entrepreneurs and share like what kind of struggles you're running into and helping each other out. And I've built a lot of great friends that are entrepreneurs, and we help each other out constantly.
That's seriously so awesome to hear. I think we're actually gonna go back a little bit in the interview. You brought up your co-founder of Mistplay a little bit earlier. So who was this fella? Was he a friend of yours from outside? Or how did you manage to find somebody who you could work with so well? Just how did it came about?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of funny because I actually when I decided to start my own company, I was still in Seattle, and so I tried to convince a bunch of my friends at Microsoft to quit their jobs with me and start this company together. And I think I pitched 2 or 3 friends on this, like good friends of mine, and none of them were willing to take that risk. It was very risky, like to quit your job and to stop getting a salary. And some of them were immigrants from other countries, so they had a visa and they were waiting for their green card, so they couldn't just abandon their green card. Even I had to move back to Canada because I didn't have a green card. So 2 of my friends rejected being my co-founder. So I decided at the end, after pitching enough friends and everyone kind of like saying that they weren't willing to take that risk, I decided to just do it by myself. I quit my job, did it by myself for 8 months. Mistplay initially was a testing platform for video games, so it was a very different business model at first. When I launched it, it didn't take off, and it wasn't until I launched it in March of 2016 and barely got users. Tried a bunch of marketing things, even though I studied a lot of marketing. Nothing was working. But since I didn't have a cushy job to fall back to, I had to keep persisting. At some point, I was getting pretty desperate, and I was actually about to give up on the whole concept. And I was in Toronto. I went from Montreal to Toronto, and I was with a friend, and we were pitching investors on a very different idea. And I was about to give up on Mistplay. I was sleeping on an air mattress at a friend's apartment in Toronto, and then at 7 a.m. one day, while I was pitching investors, my phone starts ringing, telling me basically I'm getting notifications from Amazon saying that my servers were no longer responsive. They were basically crashing, and I had a lot of errors happening. And so I was like, what the hell's happening? So at 7 a.m. I wake up, I jump on my laptop, and I noticed that my servers were crashing. The Mistplay app was not working anymore. It was not responding anymore, and I was very confused. And then I found out that one of the some YouTuber just like talked about Mistplay in Brazil, and Mistplay went viral. Like from in one day, I went from having like maybe like 500 users to 65,000 users in a single day. So my app couldn't handle that many users, and so it was no longer working, and it was very stressful. I went to Starbucks, and I was just working like 12 hours straight trying to fix it, and so at the time it was just me working on Mistplay. I can't do it anymore by myself, and I need someone to take over marketing and sales while I focus on engineering, design, and the data science part. And so he was like, I knew that he was interested in entrepreneurship because he was actually asking me questions about how to start his own business. And so he saw that as an opportunity, and he quit his job like a week later at the bank. He was working at CIBC. Very good sales, talks very well, and he's able to like pitch himself very well. And so I saw him as a good compliment, and I thought, I can show him how to do marketing, and he could be really good at creating partnerships with video game companies and doing sales. And he joined me, and that's how my co-founder was recruited.
That's so cool. Okay, so our next question would be to understand Mistplay a little bit better as a company. So how do you guys work generally?
Okay, so I mean, the company has evolved quite a bit. The company is now 5 years. It's been 5 years since I started the company, and we've matured quite a bit. We're now like close to 70 people. So like operating a 70-person company versus operating a 2 or 5-person company is very different. You need a lot more processes in place to make sure that everyone's communicating and everyone's collaborating, making sure there's transparency and all that stuff. So I think that's throwing a question back at you is like, what phase of what stage of the company are you asking that question for?
I guess the one currently right now, because as you mentioned, you guys have grown quite a bit, and now if you were to look up Mistplay on Google Apps, it's this huge app. So, going from your story of being like a one-man show to what it is now of like dozens and dozens of employees and people working together, I was just curious of how the working process has changed from your perspective, especially.
Okay, yeah. From my perspective, it's interesting. Yeah, okay, cool. So I guess from my perspective, initially I was literally coding the product, right? I was writing all the code. I was highly involved in the design. I was literally doing graphic designs myself of the product, and I was talking to doing the marketing, doing the sales. Then Eugene joined. He took over all the marketing and the sales. So we then kind of like separated those two out. I was still coding, right? All the stuff, designing, doing product improvements, and then he was focused on sales and marketing. And then eventually we hired our first engineer from McGill, Thomas Jansen. His name is Thomas Jansen. He's still with us today. I worked with him very closely, and we eventually pivoted away from the testing model towards the loyalty model for games. So TJ built, he worked on the front end and I did the back end. We grew the team to 8 people, and this is like in 2018. We were like maybe like early 2018 or maybe like 8 to 10 people. So had a few more engineers, and we started building more features on the app, and I was still coding at the time. So I kept coding till end of 2018, and I couldn't code anymore. I had to start managing the team and focusing on like other stuff. And so today I no longer write code, and so my focus is mainly I'm talking to investors quite a bit these days. So that's one of my big focuses. to the banks, making sure that the cash flows are good. But we have a CFO that's also helping with that. I focus mainly on driving the vision of the company. So thinking about the future, I'm very involved in product. So the product design, the future of the product, I meet with the product team quite frequently every week. I do a lot of work with the data team a lot on like building AI models to better recommend games, making sure that we're building a new product right now, a B2B product. So I'm building partnerships. It's kind of like going back into startup mode. Since it's a new product. For example, with EcoPlay, we built this product called EcoPlay where we plant trees while you're playing games. And I reached out to the founders of NGOs around the world, made agreements with them so that when we plant a tree on behalf of our users, we can present a certificate with the signature of the founder of the NGO and a unique identifier to the tree they planted to show proof of planting. So building partnerships with CEOs of other companies is one of my big jobs. And recruiting, I spend a lot of time recruiting. We just hired a director of product, and super excited to have him join August 9th. And I was very involved in recruiting that person and interviewing. And I interview every single person that joins in the company. So I spend a lot of time interviewing people and sourcing for people, and talking to awesome people like you guys.
I'm very flattered to hear that last part. Okay, so I'm sure we have a lot of business students listening to episodes like these. So, since you were talking about talking with investors earlier, I was wondering if you could give us a tip or two on how to pitch your company to investors and banks and such.
Yeah. Okay, so first is like you need to get in front of them, which is the hardest part. To get there, I think it's all about networking. Like you should be on LinkedIn as early as possible, connect with people, connect with other CEOs, and just say, hey, I'm a student, I'm looking to build a business, I'm looking for advice. My tip for anyone looking to raise money is never ask for money, always ask for advice. If people are very generous with their time, they like to give back, especially if they're successful, because often if you become successful, you were helped by someone else. And so you want to pass that forward. As they give you advice, if they like your business, if they'll connect you with the right investors, or they'll invest themselves in your business. I think like other entrepreneurs that have a bit of success will often be connected with investors, and they can connect you if you don't have your own network of investors. If not, I know that VCs often go to McGill. Like I remember when I was at McGill, VCs came on campus and they were giving like a class, and it was a good way to network with investors. There's also like accelerators like Founder Fuel that you can apply to, and that can get you in the door. There's Next Canada that can get you in the door. So there's a lot of these programs. Next 36 is one of them to help students get into the entrepreneurial world. So that's like step one, is like getting in front of them, which is hard. Investors don't like cold emails, so don't try like randomly like emailing or calling an investor. They want to see you work your network. They want to see. It's very important as an entrepreneur to be able to like do networking and build your network. So build your network. I think that's a whole skill set of its own, and use your network to get connected to investors eventually, by asking for advice, by helping people out and hoping people help you back. So that's how you get in front of them. And then once you're in front of them, that's another kind of like chapter, is like, how do you pitch? I mean, there's like full courses on this, but one maybe tip I can give is that make sure you have an ask. Like when you're pitching a company, end the presentation with an ask, where you're asking for something. So you can say, I want $2 million on a $10 million note, $10 million cap, safe note. So you have like a specific like ask. And then there's like, when you're raising money in a more advanced way, you can run a process yourself where you can like have multiple investors kind of like bidding for the investment, so that you can get the best valuation that the market is willing to give you. And so for doing that, you need to time everything perfectly so that you have deadlines on when the investors can offer you a term sheet, and that will really maximize the valuation you get. So that's something I learned later on. But if it's your first, so in other words, try talking to multiple investors and try getting multiple offers so that you can get the best deal possible. And there's a lot of books on how to raise money. But the course I took at Next Canada was really good. I think there's a book, I forget what it's called. Let me see. There is a book that it's called Venture Deals. So that's the book. So if you want to read a book and learn all about raising money, read the book called Venture Deals by Brad Feld and Jason Mendelsohn.
No problem. We'll link it in the description.
Thank you so much for the answer. I think I'm going to hand it back to Henri now, who will actually focus a bit more on the app of Mistplay itself before we wrap things up.
Yeah, speaking of Mistplay, so me and Camila went down the Google Play Store and saw the reviews. And what we realized was that a lot of people were calling it a scam, but there were also a lot of people that were calling it that was a legitimate application that you could earn gift cards on. So what is your take on people calling it a scam, and why do you think some people are calling it?
Yeah, so people that call it like that is people are getting blocked for fraudulent activities. Early on when we started the company, one thing we realized is that if you're giving rewards or money in any way possible. So companies like PayPal that were money, banks, Aeroplan, Cineplex, Scene Points, like literally any Bitcoin app like Coinbase, for example, all of these apps will encounter a lot of fraud where people from all over the world, like hackers, will try coming in and stealing points in illegitimate ways. So they'll try creating like bots, like software that will automatically, in our case, like they write software that automatically plays games and pretends to play games and get points in doing that. And then they'll automate this at scale, which allows them to get like honestly like hundreds of thousands of dollars in gift cards in an automated way. So early on, like I realized that I got frauded for like $15,000 in one day by a group of hackers in Vietnam when it was just me and Eugene in the company, and that was all on my credit card. Like I nearly lost all my savings because of that. So I quickly realized I need to become really good at fraud prevention and building software that can detect and differentiate humans and bots. It's it is really hard to do. It's not a perfect science. So we've been trying to use AI to detect the difference between a human playing and a software playing. And in some cases, the people that get blocked, they'll be really pissed off. They'll write scam. There are I would say there's like a very small percentage of people that might get blocked by mistake because our AI thought that they behaved in a weird way that looks like a robot, which might be true. But those people can reach out to our support team and we'll quickly unblock them. However, what we did literally, like this is funny you guys asked this because what we did this week is like in March, a new kind of fraud appeared, a very sophisticated fraud. And that forced us to introduce phone verification. So we were trying to avoid asking people for their phone numbers to verify, to make sure that they're legit and they're real. They're not like some fake account. We've been avoiding that because it's kind of like, it takes time to do that. But at this point, like we just released that ability. So I think moving forward, you're going to see a lot less of those scam messages because from now on, the way we verify people is just your phone number. And so it should get rid of all of the people that get falsely banned, essentially, because we're not going to falsely ban people anymore. We're going to just ask for their phone number. If they can verify it, they won't be banned. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a problem that's really hard to solve technically, and we're working really hard to solve it. And some people are like literally people in Vietnam that are not supposed to be able to access Mistplay. They're using VPNs. They're using auto clickers and all kinds of software to pretend, and then they get pissed off when we block them. Some of those reviews are people like that, and other reviews might be kind of like real people that are getting banned by mistake. and that's our bad, and we're getting better at it. And as I mentioned with phone verification, I think it's gonna remove that problem altogether. And we can already see our rating is at about like close to 4.5 now with our latest release in version 5.20 because of phone verification. So we're really excited for that. So I think those reviews will go away in the next 3 months, I think.
Yeah, and speaking of your customer support, so I'm going to read a review from Google Play Store here, and I want your take on this since you're only a 70-person team, and customer support might be difficult given the size of your company. So I'll start the quote. Quote, the app was actually good. The app was actually a good way to waste time, and I redeemed 2 gift cards not too long after I started using the app. When I tried to redeem a 3rd gift card, I'm suddenly blocked and told that some activity was detected that is prohibited in the terms of use. I honestly don't know what activity they're referring to. I've asked for some kind of information, but they have yet to get back to me and let me know what I did for my account to be blocked. Update: I did contact customer support and had no help in finding answers or anything else, so I deleted the app. So what is your comment on your current status of customer support, or whether that review was legitimate, or was it some hackers getting more or less pissed off?
That goes back to like us. So as I mentioned earlier, like in March, this is like a new thing that happened. In March, we got attacked by bot farms, so like these hackers, and we had to really tighten up our security and it's very non-deterministic as a system. So in some cases, there's false positives where legit users will be banned because our AI system thinks they're not legit. And our support team is small, but as I said earlier, like phone verification is allowing us right now to pull back on some of those strict measures, those strict security measures. So we won't need to ban people anymore. We're just going to ask them their phone number to verify it, and then we'll know they're legit if they can verify their phone number. Because it's really hard to spoof that if you're a hacker. So that's kind of like the solution to that review moving forward. And yeah, our support team is small, but they're good. I think recently they've been overwhelmed, but I'll make sure to follow up on that. What day was the review posted?
We aren't so sure, but we think was in June.
Okay. Sometimes that was like, as I said, like we're in the middle of like dealing with a lot of that stuff right now.
Speaking on some other problems that Mistplay have, but we understand it's software and needs improvement. But so some users commented that sometimes the update after a game has been updated, Mistplay sort of doesn't work with that game anymore. So how is the software team plan to address that issue?
Can you repeat that one more time? Can you read the review?
So this is what the review said. So quote, seems like a great way to be rewarded for playing games that you would already play. Just know that if you update any of the games, you run the risk of no longer being awarded points for playing them, even if you access the update through Mistplay. Hence the 2 stars, updated my fastest point earner. I guess the game. And end quote. So how does your team plan on addressing this issue of game updating and sometimes disconnecting with Mistplay?
If a game updates, it should still work. I don't know why he's saying that. I'll have to look into that. If you can like send me that review, we can dig into the user's name and see what he did. Maybe he did something different. But in theory, we don't rely on like from a software perspective, it should work. So I'm curious to know more about this user, like what's their username and all that stuff. So if you can send me a screenshot of that feedback, we'll look into it for sure. Like it sounds like a scenario that shouldn't happen, because I think it would be obviously a big problem if every time someone updates, it breaks your ability to get points.
Perfect. If I find it, I will definitely send it to you. And I guess to finish this off, I'll actually hand it back to Camilla.
Yes, of course. So, what advice would you give to yourself when you were in CEGEP or university? And what would you say?
Study hard, which I did, but also don't like study hard and take your grades very seriously. It's very important, but I would say also try building like a side project, because it shows like you're extra passionate about something if it's beyond just what your school's asking from you. And then the last thing is, I would say, cherish your friendships and build as many friendships as you can in university and CJEP, because it's honestly the best time of your life from a like your ability to meet so many people that are very smart and very like alike. And so build a lot of those friendships, and keep those friendships as much as you can, as long as you can. And I'm sure in the future you'll be able to help each other out, and maybe start a business together. So whenever you can, like try attending like social events at your universities and meet people.
All right, thank you for that very interesting answer. I think that's it so much again for coming on the show. Any final words from either yourself or Henry?
Well, thanks guys for having me over. Like CJEP and university is a very exciting time. So you get to decide the rest of your life. So have fun while learning and building cool things.